A silence in 6 parts, or the hours past midnight before my father comes home. 1. I was 9 the first time he came home with doused fire in his eyes. He stumbled up the steps, walked into my room, and collapsed into me in a hug fraught with apologies. His breath was thick with an odor I was too young to understand. 2. The first water we encounter is the salty drop on our cheek. Rain from lightning cloud eyes evaporated from our own oceans. The first river we encounter is the river of noises that envelops our first cry and molds it into a wet acceptance of the world. We wake in warm pockets of silence which our dreams sow into the quiet cloak of morning turned undry by the flecked dew of gentle birdsong. We rise to bubbling brooks of coffee being made as watered-down television spills lazily into our ears. Even in the silence as we sit, preparing to start our days and our cars, there is music. 3. We are prisms, refracting the world's light upon birth. We shatter into stories. Like crystallized muscle tissue, we break and we grow. As cracks fracture across us, we come into existence. Song-like and beautiful, each splintering break an echo of a chord plucked out on the fibers of our being. You can hear as beauty passes through us like light. We break and we shape it. We trap it, we cast it back, and when we can break no longer, God's final tender embrace melts us down with its warmth into wet colors. Not quite paint, but something he makes sure to dip his fingers into before rubbing them across the surface of the earth. 4. Not all silence is gentle. I remember nights thirsty and impatient as sand, minutes crumbling into the dunes of hours, entire beaches trickled down the hourglass window I prayed at. Outside, only a dehydrated street lamp whispered its electric whir like a quiet fire-bellied hummingbird. But the worst nights were not dry, they were damp. The darkness thick and pulsing, tapping at my window as though it were skin drawn taut over a djembe. The drip rhythm of my mother's sobs punctuated only by each sharp intake of breath that framed her cries like questions. She had no doubts about the liquor my father gripped in his veins. She wondered only whether he held the shivering of a stranger or a steering wheel in between his trembling hands. 5. This silence thickens into a storm cloud. This sorrow precipitates down the inside of my chest, rolling down my rib cage like rain. It leaves salt deposits in its wake, crystallizing into a sapphire spear. It juts out of my gut like the last vestige of my mother's pain, shooting through the rock formations gathered in my belly, shooting through the rock formations gathered in my breast, tearing the simple of my childhood apart like parchment. A spring gurgles into existence as my heart hardens into rock. You can hear fissures form across it like lightning, followed by the thunder of dams bursting me open like a geode. I think back to last night, let the crashing Niagara of my parents fall onto my bare shoulders. I try to straighten my buckling back, but I hear my father running up the stairs over and over in my mind. His footsteps are a cascade, a waterfall turned upward, pummeling me with everything. The sound of my own blood, the stuttering footsteps of a ladybug crossing a blade of grass in Algeria, every single highway in the United States, Asia, Eurasia, the Middle East, the entire 30% of the earth that is not water turns to water. I am going to drown. I cannot breathe in the sound of this silence. 6. A single raindrop car door shuts. The light drizzle of keys meanders from the driveway to the door. A bolt turns back in its socket, and at last, the door opens with a splash. He steps into my room. It is full of the comfortably empty silence of a tension which at last has dissipated. He says nothing. I know he is looking at me, but I cannot look at him. Instead, he begins to weep. A sound that should sound as shallow as the wet of a dog's nose, but coming from my father, It sounds deep as the deep of the sea.